I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadows we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been smeared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of a Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro still lives on a lonely island of poverty amidst a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we've come here today to dramatize this shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to the nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which each and every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black and white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it is obvious that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in this great vault of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Now is the time to make real promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valleys of segregation to the sunlit path of material prosperity. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to believe to distrust all of white people. Many of our white brothers, as evidenced by the presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied to our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. And we cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must pledge that we shall march forward. We cannot turn back. There are those who ask the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as Negro is a victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, which are heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highway and the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as Negro's basic mobility is from a small ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by the signs that says, for white only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has no reason to vote for. We cannot be satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down as water and righteousness as a mighty stream. I'm not mindful that some of you have come from great trials and tribunals. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with that faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. So go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to your slums and ghettos of your northern city, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. So I say to you, my friends, today, even though we face difficulties of today's and tomorrow, I still have a dream. I have a dream that is deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up to the true meaning of its creed. That is, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the hills of Georgia, the sons of former slave owners and the sons of former slaves will sit down together in the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with heat of injustice, a state sweltering with heat of oppression will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of the skin, but by the contents of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that little black boys in Alabama and little black boys and little black girls in Alabama will join hands with white boys and white girls in Alabama as brothers and sisters. This is our hope. With this faith, I will go back to the South. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of mountains of despair a strong stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to live together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.